Welcome, everyone. I'm Lee Merriweather, and with me is Todd Orston. Todd and I are partners at the law firm of Merriweather and Tharp, and you're listening to Merriweather and Tharp Radio on the new Talk 106.7. Here you'll learn about divorce, family law, tips on how to save your marriage if it's in the middle of a crisis, and from time to time, even tips on how to take your marriage to the next level. Well, today, we're doing something.
We're going to take it to the next level.
Take it to the next level. Now, we're going to do a little something different. Something different. Although it's the same at the same time.
Try not to get too hip, all right?
I guess
do a little something.
I guess I'm not as hip as the celebrities we're going to talk about today.
There you go. Yep. Yeah, we're going to talk about celebrities and the troubles that they deal with that relate to family law. And the way I look at it is they are really, other than maybe bigger money, you know, they have higher incomes, more assets. They're no different than anybody else.
Right.
And they run into a lot of problems, legal problems. And
just like everyone else.
And, you know, they make mistakes sometimes. They do things the right way sometimes. But we can always learn. Just like we can learn from every case that we handle, we can learn by looking at some of the issues and some of the things that some of these celebrities went through and are going through right now. And hopefully take some knowledge, you know, and hopefully avoid the same problems that they're dealing with.
Exactly. All right. Well, let's. I know you like this subject, and you've.
What are you? Yeah, yes. As a matter of fact, I should be at home watching TMZ or whatever. I don't have time for this. No. I guess I enjoy it to some degree, only that I like hearing these stories and seeing how issues are being handled. But yeah, let's jump in and let's talk about what I'm saying or calling when is enough enough. All right, A-Rod, Alex Rodriguez.
All right.
He is paying his ex-wife Cynthia Curtis, or he was paying upwards of $115,000 per month. Sorry, I'm choking up. Combined spousal and child support. All right.
Wow.
Now keep in mind, when he was playing for the Yankees, he was making upwards of $30 million a year, and so since he has left and he's no longer playing ball, he's making a measly. I mean, let me just start by saying, A-Rod, I'm sorry, $3 million a year. I don't know how you do it, so my heart goes out to you. All right, little dose of sarcasm there. But he's making, whether those are ridiculous numbers to most people or not, going from $30 million a year to $3 million a year.
That's a huge drop.
A huge drop. All right, so therefore, $115,000 a month doesn't work anymore.
Right.
He is trying to modify the support numbers, okay? And he did what we would do, which is he and his attorneys, they went through, they looked at budgets, whatever. He says that the actual expenses for the kids should be somewhere between $7,000 and $12,000. I think the last I read, he was willing to pay upwards of about $20,000. But his ex is demanding $50,000 a month and is asking for that, even though she has another child with another person, is engaged to that person, and she has a master's degree and is able to work. And that's one of the arguments A-Rod is making, that he feels like he's subsidizing the lifestyle of not just his ex and his children, but her whole new family.
Right,
and
including her husband.
That's right.
Her potentially new husband.
That's right. So when is enough enough?
That sounds like enough to me. Oh, my goodness gracious.
Sounds like a bad James Bond movie name.
$50,000 a month. Wow. I could do a lot with that.
My kids would be very happy.
Yeah. They would probably be spoiled rotten. It probably wouldn't be good for them, actually.
$50,000 a month. And we've done shows on this particular issue.
Yeah. Especially with, what was it? Oh, Brittany.
Yeah, Brittany. And K-Fed
wanted $60,000 a month in child support.
Anyone who listened to that show will know where I stand on this issue. which is
In other words, K-Fed would not want to hire you.
K-Fed would not. I'm not saying all right, I could be hypocritical. I could represent him. All right. K-Fed, if you're listening, I believe in your case. No, maybe not, because
Right.
I am one of those people that I do not believe when I hear these types of numbers. The spousal support I can understand to a degree.
Right.
All right, because it's a lifestyle issue, and some of that comes into play with child support. But when you're looking at actual expenses of $5,000 to $7,000, asking for $50,000, I'm getting choked up. It doesn't make sense.
Right. So let's break it down. So the alimony, when we're talking about lifestyle, so I don't know how long they were married, but so she got accustomed to a certain lifestyle based on a $3 million a year, $300 million a year.
$30 million.
$30 million.
You'll get it right. It's fine. Like I said, my brain goes mush also when I'm thinking about those kinds of numbers.
$30 million a year. I mean, that's a certain lifestyle, but obviously his lifestyle has been reduced drastically. I mean, it's been reduced tenfold. So it's certainly fair for him to ask for, well, I shouldn't keep you at the same lifestyle if my lifestyle has gone down.
Well, let's be clear. I doubt, and this is just the back and forth that we're going to engage in on this issue. I doubt his lifestyle has changed, because I am certainly hopeful that he saved a couple of shekels, and so his lifestyle doesn't necessarily need to change. What changed is his income.
Okay.
I don't know what he's worth. He could be worth, meaning his assets.
Maybe his $3 million is based on his investments, and he's just getting paid $3 million in interest.
Right. I don't know where the $3 million comes from. It could be interest. It could
That's
be,
a good point.
He could be doing other work like broadcasting or whatever it might be. But the bottom line is, his lifestyle probably hasn't changed, and he has a whole bunch of assets. But things like support, issues of support, aren't necessarily and usually related to what kind of assets you have in the bank. It's what is your income.
Right.
So the door, at least here in Georgia, would be open to a modification. Then it comes down to, okay, what number would be reasonable? Because, even when we're talking about $7,000 to $10,000 or $12,000 a month, most Georgia courts aren't going to do something like that.
Right. That's a huge number.
Huge number. $50,000 a month. I'm not saying it's never happened, but also relatively unlikely. So when I see numbers like that, I sort of get the shakes, because I'm thinking, what do you need $50,000 for? No, let me change that. What do your children need $50,000 for? Because unless their lifestyle includes, I don't even know.
Well, maybe a private school that's $10,000 a month.
And we've talked about this before. Should A-Rod be paying for private school? Yes. Shame on him if he's not. Meaning, if that's where you want your children to go.
But if we were presenting this case in court, we were representing her, the ex-wife, we would be going to her saying, "Hey, I need you to gather together all the evidence of the money that you spend on the children, where it's going, how." Now, you don't have to itemize in a child support case. Like, in general, child support's for the children. You don't have to account for it. But in a modification case, when in Georgia, this would be asking for a deviation upwards from the child support guidelines based on a high income situation. In this case, A-Rod, even though he's had a huge drastic reduction at $3 million a year, he's still a high income earner. And so she would have to lay out her basis for $50,000 a year. And the court could easily agree with A-Rod, saying, well, you don't need this. Your husband makes, I don't know what he makes, but maybe makes $500,000 a year. Like, look, you don't need it. And plus, when she does get married, well, I don't know if there was a settlement or what state they're in, but in Georgia, if this had been a Georgia agreement and she got remarried, then that would terminate the alimony.
Right. And of course, the one thing I don't know, or one of the things I don't know, is of the $50,000, how much would be attributable to and sort of listed as part of the spousal support, and how much is child support. But the argument was, that subsidizing of her life with another family. And I got to tell you, that resonates with me.
Yeah.
Should somebody with that kind of income and that kind of assets be paying for the lion's share of children's expenses, actual expenses? Absolutely. Tennis lessons, dance lessons, private school.
Right.
Those types of reasonable things. But when we're talking about just give me $20,000 more, $30,000 more, to me, that's not really going for the children.
At least it doesn't sound that way.
Yeah.
And we don't know what the actual offers were back and forth. We're just looking at this in general. And that's something that we might take to court, because if it doesn't have a reasonable basis, well, it's worth taking your shot with the judge. Hey, and up next, we're going to learn why you should be wary with the company you keep. Welcome, everyone. I'm Lee Merriweather, and with me is Todd Orston, and you're listening to Merriweather and Tharp Radio on the new Talk 106.7. Well, we've been getting into some celebrity situations this show, and just examining, because it's public, what's the paparazzi? Is that what it is? The interesting thing about these celebrity divorces and celebrity family law issues is that they go through things that everybody else goes through. And sometimes you hear about this drama, and the drama we hear about in some of these celebrity cases is nothing compared to the cases we've actually handled. But it still makes for interesting radio, because they do have certain unique challenges sometimes, like when we were talking about A-Rod's situation, he went from $30 million to $3 million. But there are other people out there that go from, like when the economy hit, they may have made $100,000 and they lost their job and had to replace it with a $50,000 or a $60,000 job. So we just thought it'd be kind of fun to take some of these celebrity situations where there's public information about them and break them down and talk about them and talk about how they might apply here in Georgia or in your situation, and just learn from it.
I agree.
Well, good. I will say that I'll just say this when we'll get to the next examples, but we've handled celebrity cases before, and I won't say names or anything, but what I find really interesting is, so as lawyers, when we write letters out to people, the opposing attorney and whatnot, we think of it from two perspectives mainly. One is we're writing to persuade for either a behavior to stop or to consider a settlement proposal or something like that. But we're also writing it because we know in some cases the judge might see it, or
you're creating a record.
You're creating a record in some situations.
That's right.
But in the situations of celebrity cases, you have to consider
public opinion.
And how will a paparazzi type newspaper or whatever we want to call it, media source.
You are so hip. I got to tell you. I mean, you are blinding me with your hipness right now.
You can see I don't follow stuff very much, but you have to consider how they're going to take this letter and spin it. Because I had that happen to me before. Wrote a letter in a situation. It was sent to, I thought it was all private. It was sent to a studio. I won't say what network, but it was sent. And all of a sudden, somebody sends me an email like the next day saying, oh, somebody's written about your letter. I'm like, what? So I go to the website. I won't say the name, but I go to the website and it says, and then his lawyer sent a really mean, nasty letter. I don't know if it actually said like that, but
in that deep voice.
It wasn't that deep voice.
I think James Earl Jones read the letter. And
yeah, he did. If you hovered your mouse over it, that's how it sounded. But no, I freaked out for a minute, going, "Wait, what did I put in the letter?" Even though I'd written it just a few days ago.
Which anybody who knows you and anybody who's listened to the radio show knows. That's not you. It's not your personality.
Right.
You're not the one that's going to write that diatribe, that vicious letter. So to get something like that back, it's like, oh my gosh,
what did I say?
Was I out of my mind when I wrote that letter?
So I clicked the link, and there was nothing mean or nasty in it. It was a statement of a legal position.
It was a spin. They were trying to spin.
It was
it's you're right. There is a dynamic when it comes to celebrity divorces where normally writings that would just be between the attorneys and the clients, or potentially for consumption by the court at some future hearing. Now you have to worry about public consumption. You have to worry about, okay, I've written this letter and they may try to, whatever, gain some momentum on whatever it is they're trying to accomplish by pushing it out into the public. And then all of a sudden the public is outraged or whatever the case might be.
Or maybe it's with certain TV shows, you're like, oh, let's drum up some press around this TV show by releasing this letter. So that's how it felt.
All right. So now that we've dealt with your feelings, we're gonna go on to the next one. And there was a quote by an author. His name is Kenneth G. Ortiz, and it is a quote, or it is a concept and a statement that really many different authors, many different people have written about, or but the way he wrote it, I really enjoyed and really I liked. Be wary of the company you keep, for they are a reflection of who you are and who you want to be. And that is something that we deal with all the time, because unfortunately, people sometimes get in trouble. And in this situation, Bethany Frankel of the Real Housewives of New York City fame, and I think I was actually corrected by somebody in our office that I said she got her start there. And they were like, no, The Apprentice with Martha Stewart. Hello. I'm
really?
Like, yeah. So okay.
It shows you how hip you
You're
are.
asking me, yeah. I have not verified that. So that's what I was told. So, but anyway, Bethany Frankel, she's in a pretty significant custody fight with her ex, Jason Hoppy. And Jason wants to maintain a joint custody arrangement. Bethany, on the other hand, is fighting for primary custody and decision-making authority. Now, Bethany, I'm going to go as quickly as possible. Bethany's on-again, off-again boyfriend is a man by the name of Dennis Shields. God rest his soul. Dennis passed away in Trump Tower, in his apartment. They did not do an autopsy, but there was belief and concern that it was due to drugs.
Because he was only like 51 or something like that, right?
And so the long and the short is, Mr. Hoppy is now trying to, or did try to, use that information. And basically, the position that he was taking was, well, if that's your friend and you have left our child or children alone with him, he has literally babysat, and now it turns out he's a drug user and he died potentially of an overdose. What does that say about you and the company that you keep and the company you allow around, our children?
Our children, yeah.
And now I will say, cutting to the end, but there's still a lot to be learned from this. They went to court. Judge rejected that argument.
Okay.
And I think rightfully so, and was like, look, I'm not going to hold against her the fact that while he was on his own in his apartment, maybe he did do drugs and he did die from that. That has nothing to do with her as a mother.
Right.
All right. But these types of issues come up all the time where people do things, hang out with different people, bring those people around the children, bad things happen, and it does get used against you.
Yeah, because we've seen it in the termination cases where a parents' rights are being terminated because of certain behaviors. And we have seen the state of Georgia intervene in certain situations where perhaps a parent, a mom, was in a relationship with a man that was physically abusive and doing drugs. And because she would not leave the home with the children were witnesses to this. The state of Georgia came in and removed the children from mom because of that relationship. And then when she didn't terminate that relationship and she continued to live with that person, they actually brought action to terminate her parental rights. So
because it does then become a reflection of who you are and who you want to be.
Right.
And I understand that we could have 10 more shows about people in abusive relationships and their reluctance to leave that abusive relationship. So I get it. It can be incredibly difficult. It could be not even short of a type of a drug addiction that you just can't beat. You, out of love, out of whatever feelings, you don't want to leave that person.
Financial reasons.
Right.
Yeah.
So I get it. I understand the hardships. But when you surround yourself by these types of people, I've had cases where people were having parties where they were like sex parties. I mean, horrible behavior. Ooh. And children were in the house.
Oh,
and
geez.
some of those people were coming back to the house at other times, and and it bothered the kids, obviously. And I'll tell you who it really bothered: the judge. So you got to be careful. I mean, if there's a lesson to be learned here, it is understand that this kind of behavior, even if you're not the one doing drugs, even if you're not the one engaging in that harmful behavior, if it's even possible that behavior could influence or affect your children, it can be used against you.
Yeah. Even if, like in that situation, so it was an on again, off again boyfriend, the death occurred away from the children. The point is, the learning lesson from this is, look, if there's someone that perhaps lives a certain lifestyle that's not conducive to being around parents, it's not a good idea. Maybe you shouldn't be associating with them. I mean, I know that may sound harsh, but it could end up with you having to defend yourself in court, especially if you've got a contentious relationship with your ex-spouse and you've got children. So,
yeah. I mean, you got to be careful. That's again, the takeaway is, it's not just what you're doing. Mm-hmm. It's the people that you're friends with. What are they doing? And is their behavior potentially going to impact the children? Because if there's any possibility of that, and if you have a litigious spouse or somebody who is not afraid to go to court,
right,
and bring you back in front of a judge to deal with the issue, understand that the judge could go one of two ways. Like in the Frankel case, no, sir, I'm not going to hold that against her. But maybe the other way. Yes, I think you spending time and having him babysit, now it turns out he's a drug abuser. Yeah, that's a pretty poor choice as a parent.
Hey, up next, we're going to learn why sticks and stones may break some bones, but words can result in a lawsuit. I'm Lee Merriweather, and with me is Todd Orston. Todd and I are partners at the law firm of Merriweather & Tharp, and you're listening to Merriweather & Tharp Radio on the new Talk 106.7. If you want to learn more about us, you can always check us out online at AtlantaDivorceTeam.com. Well, let's get back into it.
Yeah, I before we do, I do have to say one thing. I'm notorious for speaking with my hands, but I do like on the radio how when you're saying with me is Todd Orston, you point to me. just so the listeners can hear you pointing at me. I mean, and the only other person talking.
It's for our YouTube audience.
Oh, okay, got it. And again, there's two of us. So I think process of elimination, they can figure out I'm the other guy.
It's just making you feel uncomfortable.
Okay, Lee. Sticks and stones may break some bones, but words can result in a lawsuit. WWE superstar Charlotte Flair, daughter of wrestling legend Ric Flair. Back in the day when I watched wrestling many moons ago, Ric Flair, he was fun to watch.
Rowdy Rodney Piper.
I was never a big fan of Mr. Piper. But he's being, or they are both being sued. Rick and his daughter, Charlotte, wrote a book. And it was, I believe, I haven't read the book, but like a tell-all kind of book. Mm-hmm. In the book, part of what they wrote about is Charlotte was critical of her ex-husband, Ricky Paul Johnson. And she said some not-so-nice things about him, including allegations that he is impotent. And needless to say, Ricky was not happy. And so Ricky could have done a couple of things. He could have said, and that's about it. He could have, written a stern letter, don't do it again, mm-hmm. or he could have done what he did, which is he filed a lawsuit, basically claiming that the allegations are false, and on top of that they've caused him and his family significant embarrassment. Okay, so what's the takeaway here? I mean, the takeaway obviously for most people is, if your spouse writes a novel and publishes it and it has some negative things, sue them. That's not the takeaway. The takeaway for most people is be careful what you say publicly. Mm-hmm. And usually it's not going to be in the form of a novel. It's going to be in the form of Facebook or Instagram or whatever.
You twit face.
Yes.
When YouTube and Twitter and Facebook all combine, it'll be you twit face.
You twit face. Okay. So if you post something on you twit face, be ready for there to be some kind of a repercussion.
Potential legal action.
Yeah, and it could be used against you in many different ways, but at the very least, be ready for it to cause drama.
Yeah, because most parenting plans that you see around the country, so I think I am pretty sure this is universal. I can't swear to it, but I'm pretty sure most states now have
non-harassment type.
Have a clause in there that says neither party shall speak ill of the other party, disparage the other party, particularly in front of the minor children.
Right.
Or they can't, and so often the children are connected on these social media feeds, and so one parent will say something bad about the other parent, and boom, I mean, you've got evidence right here in your social media feed that you have violated a court order. And there have been situations where the judge threw the person in jail. They said, well, not only did you violate my court order, you did it blatantly. Like, you sent it to the whole world. It was as if you didn't care if I would see this. Like, sometimes the judges will take sort of a personal offense to it because they're, from the judges we've spoken to, they look at it as their job is to protect the children during this process. And so they will take it, someone will take it personally, and they'll say, for as a punishment, which they can do this, you need to spend a day in jail. Man, you do, especially in some counties, you do not want to do that.
Really? Are there some counties where it's a nice afternoon spent in jail?
It might be. I don't know.
That county, no. But over here, oh, it's lovely. Massage in the afternoon, little cucumber slices for your eyes. It's wonderful.
You never know. But there's some that are worse than others.
Yeah, I'm sure.
There's some where you just sit there twiddling your hands, and there's others where you're sitting there and the guy next to you just got his jaw punched off.
I don't know what shows you're watching.
No, actually, that happened to one of our clients. His
jaw was punched off?
No, the person sitting next to him, they got into a fight, and the guy's jaw was hit. He was hit so hard that his jaw was broken, dislocated from his head. It was disgusting.
You know what? If this was an intervention, you've just talked me out of going to jail ever. So thank you. It worked.
Good. I'm glad.
I am scared straight right now.
I don't want you to ever go to jail.
So the takeaway here is, and I've also had cases like that. I've had cases with people taking pictures, giving the finger. I've had pictures of the new girlfriend holding the child and talking about the child. Oh, my baby girl, or my this, or my that. And that kind of behavior, first of all, it's going to stoke a lot of emotion. It's going to create problems no matter what. The way the court's going to look at it also is, especially if this is a parenting situation, how is that good parenting? How is that good co-parenting? Mm-hmm. If you're going in front of a court and there's a custody fight over something, why is the court going to believe you, who is sending pictures with your middle finger up or saying horrible things about your former spouse or the parent of your child? Why would the court believe that you have any ability whatsoever to co-parent? So
it won't.
So as much as you think it's going to make you feel good to send those kinds of communications, take it from us, because this is what we do. When the attorney gets their hands on it, it will be used against you, and the consequences can be pretty dire. Yeah. Maybe not your jaw falling off or a lovely day at a jail spa, but it can definitely impact you.
Yeah, I don't think a lovely day at a jail spa would be motivating for someone.
All right, let's go on to the next one.
All right.
When a judge ain't a judge, the use of private judges or arbitrators to resolve legal matters.
All right.
So here, Chris Pratt and Anna Faris, they've apparently finalized their divorce, and other celebrities, especially in California where this is pretty common, have also used private judges. But basically, it's the same thing here, where what we call an arbitrator.
Right.
And what you're doing is you're divesting the trial court of its authority to make these decisions by voluntarily giving it or putting it into the hands of a private individual. Mm-hmm. And there are some benefits there.
Yes.
Some potential downfalls. All right. And you have to be very careful. Can you submit issues here to an arbitrator? Yeah.
In Georgia, yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Including child custody, which you couldn't always do. I think in 2007 or 2008, they changed the law. So a private arbitrator could decide child custody issues.
Yeah. Now, would that still have to be basically approved by the sitting trial court judge?
The final order would
Right.
be, yes.
Correct.
So, but my understanding is they tend to not, unless there's some clear
Something blatant.
abusive power or something like
Right.
that, abusive discretion. But it would be kind of like any other appeal.
Yeah. So some of the benefits are you can set the timetable.
Right.
And that's, and on top of that, there's some more privacy, especially when you're dealing with celebrities and they're like, well, anything we file, anything we do, it's immediately in basically the clerk, it's filed as public record.
Mm-hmm.
But
The proceeding itself is private.
That's
A court reporter can't show up. A reporter can't show up in the courtroom.
the paparazzi, as you keep talking about.
They can't show up and take notes of what's going on and immediately write an article about it. It's going to be a private setting. They're going to be able to shut the doors.
That's
and
right.
the other great thing is, so our courts get really backed up. So it can shorten the process because we've seen situations where the cost of the trial became more because we were put on a trial calendar in October. So we made sure we were all ready. We subpoenaed all the witnesses, but it got continued to November. We do the same thing in November. It gets continued to December. We've had cases like that where it went 6 months before we finally got to try the case. And unfortunately, we had to bill the client each time to prepare for that situation.
Some of the preparation you don't have to redo.
Right.
But what people don't oftentimes understand is that there's automatically going to be some level of preparation you need to do.
Mm-hmm.
When a month goes by,
Yep.
you have to do some prep work if the next day is the trial. And if it gets postponed for another 30 days, there's some level of preparation you have to do.
If you have witnesses, you got to reach out to the witnesses again.
That's
you got to
right.
coordinate all that stuff. There's a lot of effort behind the scenes in getting ready for trial. You
can avoid all that.
Avoid all that with arbitration because you, the lawyers, and the arbitrator to pick the dates that you're going to be available. It's just set in stone. 99% of the time, unless someone gets sick, it's set in stone. Your witness very informal. There aren't, the rules of evidence are often a little bit relaxed.
Yep.
And
now I will say just very quickly before we go to break, some of the cons though are you're taking it away from a judge who handles these matters on a daily basis and putting it in the hands of someone. Now, granted, if it's someone a former family court judge or
Right.
someone where they know, then that's great. If you're putting it into the hands of somebody who doesn't have that level of experience, you don't know what you're going to get, and they may make good decisions or they may not.
yeah, and you just never know. Now, hopefully your lawyer will know if this person, and sometimes it's not a lawyer, a fellow family law lawyer.
Correct.
And so that, you have to make a decision. Is this going to really help my case? And up next, we're going to hear about a sobering tale about sobriety. Welcome, everyone. I'm Lee Merriweather, and with me is Todd Orson. Todd and I are partners at the law firm of Merriweather and Tharp, and you're listening to Merriweather and Tharp Radio on the new Talk 106.7. And I'm laughing because Todd's making these strange hand gestures.
Well, no, that's strange. I'm pointing at you. People are going to be listening and going,
Who's the lead?
Is he throwing gang signs? What is he doing?
Oh, my. If you want to read more about
I'm
us,
Todd Orston, and with me is Lee Merriweather. Right there.
I'm very
Expressive.
expressive
Got it.
speaker. If you want to read more about us, you can always check us out online at AtlantaDivorceTeam.com.
All right. Sobering
Ready?
tale about sobriety. Last segment. We have a lot to get to, so I'd really like you to take this a little more seriously. Ben Affleck and Jennifer Garner. Anybody who's read any of the news, celebrity news, he's really been struggling with sobriety issues. And I got to tell you, the way that Jennifer Garner handled it, and again, I'm not her attorney. I don't know the ins and outs. I don't know, what was discussed behind closed doors, so I could be very wrong here. She actually tried to postpone the issuance of any kind of a final order until he became sober and, was more stable. Okay. In a lot of cases, I think you can attest to this. That's not the case.
No, they push to get to trial while the person's down.
That's right. And so now I will say my understanding is that he did reach a level of sobriety where she was, willing to discuss terms. But those terms are still pretty strict. My understanding is that it is going to be monitored or supervised parenting time just to ensure that he is sober and that the kids are protected. But
that's a great, from a standpoint of a co-parent, that's great, because you taking advantage of the person that's perhaps they're in a facility and they're getting treatment or something, taking advantage of the situation, try to force a hearing. Yeah, maybe you win the case on a short-term basis, but you're probably hurting your children.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, your kids need they need their moms and their dads. They need both their parents there to be a part of their life. And if there is, the best thing you can do for your children is to give your, I guess, ex-husband now, or some grace so that he can get better. I mean, that also takes off the pressure of the divorce and allows him to focus on getting better. I've had those situations where thankfully the other side, my client may have had an alcohol issue. Thankfully the other side said, hey, look, can we put the case on hold while if he goes into treatment? That was their offer, actually. If he goes into treatment, like a 30-day treatment plan, we'll put a pause on the whole litigation. We just want him better. And boy, we jumped on that. I had to talk to my client, explain why this was such a great deal. But,
but if you're in the throes of an addiction issue, then they may not be very accepting.
And sometimes there's this fear that, well, if I go in there that I'm admitting I have a problem. Like, if someone's filing for divorce over alcoholism, you probably have a problem.
Well, and on top of that, there's probably a large amount of evidence already out there to establish that you have the problem.
Yes.
So I understand we make the argument all the time about, is it creating some kind of a precedent that could be used against you? I get it. I understand. But sometimes you have to balance.
Yep.
What is more important, getting you the help that you need to get you better, to get you healthy so that you can have a healthy relationship with your child or children, or pretend like there's not a problem,
right? Don't
get any help, and they're still going to have plenty of evidence to show that you have a problem.
Exactly. So, all right. Well, the other problem we're going to have is we're going to run out of time.
We are. So stop talking so I can keep going. This one I'm going to call Let's Agree What Is Mine Is Mine, What's Yours Is Yours, the rising popularity of prenuptial agreements.
All right,
we're done. We're moving on.
Next one. No, just kidding.
Prenups are on the rise, okay? My understanding is that there was one attorney poll that was conducted by the American Academy of Matrimonial Lawyers, and 62% of attorneys said they've seen an increase over the last 3 years, including an increase with millennials in the use of prenuptial agreements.
And we've definitely seen an increase in it. So it's not just for the celebrities that are doing them. You hear about those you hear about those frequently, but you don't hear about as all the other people that are starting to do them more and more.
Yeah, and where it becomes very interesting, a celebrity divorce where there's a lot of property, that case could take, sometimes you hear about cases and years later, they're still fighting.
Yeah.
And then you hear about Chris Pratt and Faris, and they've had some disagreements about custody and what that's going to look like. But for the most part, they had a prenup, and the property issues were resolved. So
through the prenup. So they agreed ahead of time.
That's right.
How they were going to divide up their assets and their liabilities.
So as opposed to years of litigation, all right, it's basically oh yeah, that's right, that's mine, that's yours.
Right.
We're done.
And so they went to arbitration just over the custody issues.
That's right.
Which created a shorter trial, or even a private arbitration. It's still going to shorten the process and make it less stress on all the parties. It's going to make it less expensive. So, and especially when you have those situations, perhaps a second or a third marriage, can be a really good idea.
Yeah. And so we absolutely believe in and understand and embrace the value of prenuptial agreements, because we obviously it's part of what we do. The litigation, we see what happens when parties don't have a prenup and the fight ensues, and you are basically caught up in potentially months and months, sometimes years, of litigation over these property issues that maybe could have been resolved had you entered into that agreement at the very beginning. And I understand it's difficult.
We need to do a whole show on prenups.
Yeah.
We add that to the list.
We have a long list. So, all right. Let's move on to the next one. Not showing up for a scheduled hearing is a bad option.
It is?
Yeah, I know. It's going to come as a surprise.
I thought if you just didn't show up, they couldn't go on without you.
Yeah, no. That's pretty much not at all the way it works.
I'm just kidding. They can absolutely go on without you.
Yeah. So movie and TV actor Columbus Short, formerly of the TV show Scandal, is in some hot water. All right. He was scheduled to appear in court as part of divorce proceedings. His wife appeared. Her attorney appeared. His attorney appeared. But somebody was missing. Mr. Columbus Short decided, for whatever reason, not to appear. And the court did not like that. And in this situation, the consequence was pretty severe. The court apparently issued a bench warrant. Basically, what that means
that was
for
a really
listeners
upset judge.
That is telling law enforcement to go and pick him up and place him in custody.
Mm-hmm.
So
where you see someone's jaw and it get knocked
that's
off.
right, exactly. We'll do another show on that. Add that to the list. It is a bad idea for many reasons. If you are called to court, it is not a suggestion. It is not the court saying, hey, if you've got nothing better to do, why don't you stop by? I'm going to be here.
Let's talk about the rest of your life.
Exactly. It is an order. And if you violate the order, different judges handle it differently.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And there are different types of sanctions. Some are incredibly severe and some aren't.
And there's even cases where, like, especially if it's a final hearing, you don't show up, the other side gets to present all the evidence they want, and you're not there to refute it, and the court can basically hammer the person that doesn't show up, hammer them and give the other side almost everything.
Yeah, I had a case once where my client was living outside of the jurisdiction, and he was actually out of the country, and he basically had to decide whether he was going to come in for a contempt being brought against him.
Mm-hmm.
And he feared what the consequence and what the findings of the court would be if he showed up for the hearing. And so he did not show. And the judge was super happy.
Did you show up?
Yeah, I showed up. Oh. And the judge was nice enough. This is in Cobb County. Was nice enough to allow me to say a few things, and then finally was like, all right, well, Mr. Orston, nothing you're saying is evidence. So are you done? You're done? Great. And the other party basically got what they asked for. But other sanctions can be a dismissal of your complaint or a dismissal of the answer that you filed. It can result, like we've already talked about, in an arrest warrant being entered. It can, like you were just talking about, not showing up. They go forward with the hearing.
Right.
And whatever the other party wants, they get.
They gets.
I was gonna correct myself, and I'm like, I likes how that sounds. No. So showing up or not showing up for court,
mm-hmm.
Bad idea. If you have to go. And the better plan is bring somebody with you, like an attorney, who can help you, can give you the advice you need so that you don't get taken advantage of and hurt in the process.
Which we don't want to have happen to anybody.
That's right.
Hey, everyone, that about wraps up this show. Thanks so much for listening. If you want to review us, you can go online to mtlawoffice.com/review it to learn how to review our show. Thanks so much for listening.
This audio program does not establish an attorney-client relationship with Merriweather and Tharp.